Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. If every decision flows through your CEO, your company has a bottleneck. That's not a strategy. Part of your job as chief of staff is to take a look at the organization as a whole and say, where do decision-making rights live? Who is making calls on what? Many, many times things get bottlenecked with the CEO and everything has to be run through them. Oh, we have to talk to the CEO first. Oh, let's pause. Let's wait to hear back. Let's make sure it's okay before we move forward. Delay, delay, delay. Then all sorts of subsequent problems happen. One of your cool jobs as chief of staff is going, okay, where do these decision rights live and where should they live? It's like, look, 3 months ago, this is where that decision should have lived. It was spot on. We did a reorg. Now we have roles shifting around. So people are just naturally closer to this information. Or, hey, we've had leaders who have grown in their capability. And maybe before they weren't quite ready to make that call, but now they are. So all these different factors come into play. And your job is to dynamically and continually and keep up with the evolution of, okay, now we can move this over here. Now it makes sense to move this to this person over here. So many of the times it's CEO has a whole bunch of decisions. Those should be distributed to the LT, to the leadership team. And it's going, okay, among the decisions the CEO has, which ones belong there? Because a lot of them do belong there. And a lot of them is like, nope, we need the final call to come from the CEO. And that's just how it is on this particular decision. Many, many decisions can live with the LT and don't ever have to hit the CEO's desk. That is a magical time. That is a magical thing where you're like, our LT is perfectly capable to make this call. And certain individuals might be equipped to make that call. And it doesn't even have to use time and energy and mental capacity and bandwidth from the CEO. It lives with the LT. And sometimes these take conversations and sometimes they take a brief transition period where it's like, hey, CEO, you used to make this call. We're going to move this to the COO with counsel from the entire LT. And maybe the first 1 or 2 times it's a COO takes point on that decision, gathers input from the LT, makes a recommendation saying, here's the recommendation. We're going to move forward with this by next Friday, barring any major objections. CEO either says good to go or says nothing, and therefore the decision and action steps proceed. You do that once or twice. And then if there's like actually, I would make sure you're thinking about this, this, and this too. COO goes, oh, okay, that's good to know. So COO, then the next time they take point on that decision, gather input from the LT, and then makes the recommendation back up to the CEO with the feedback incorporated from the last time the CEO said, think of this, this, and this. CEO goes, yep, you're good to go. They do that cycle one more time. CEO says, yep, you're good to go. And now the COO and the LT have that decision. And it doesn't even hit the CEO's desk anymore. I've seen this happen and it can be very effective. The other way this could happen is the chief of staff and or the LT just take a decision, right? If it's like, look, the CEO, 1, might not even notice if that decision is not on their plate anymore. 2, it needs to move, right? So sometimes it's like, they might not want to give that up, but it needs to move someplace else. And you just do that. And then it's just the way it is. That's absolutely a scenario as well. So as chief of staff, apply judgment here and discern which case calls for which action and which workflow. But there's usually decisions that can come off of the CEO's plate. And if you have a strong C-suite team, then you have lots of options to distribute that decision-making power. I would also just to throw in here, have one person be the end all be all, like shot caller or tiebreaker. So it might be kind of a racy concept. You talk about the racy methodology where this one person makes the decision, but these people are consulted and or these people or stakeholders have to be informed. If a decision is made about the onboarding process, there's lots of stakeholders that at the very least need to be informed of that change because it affects the handoffs and the transitions and their workflows for their various departments, et cetera, et cetera. So just having kind of an eye and ear for that as well. So CEO to leadership team, I would also encourage you to look at, is the leadership team holding on to too many decisions? Do you have very capable VPs, directors, managers who are closer to the front lines, which is a huge advantage, right? So my personal opinion is getting decisions closer to the front lines where people are closer to the actual information and closer to the environment and kind of what's happening and what the effect and different impacts of a decision would be, the better. So if you can think about your organization and say, how do I move decisions closest to the front lines? I think that's a huge advantage. Few points you have to balance with that. Some decisions should naturally live with the director versus the manager, or the VP versus the director, or the C-suite, et cetera. Sometimes people, you can give them context of the big picture, and that's very helpful, and you should. But some people, they can't quite connect the dots or integrate that, or it doesn't make sense to them, or they're not quite sure how that affects their day-to-day. So give them enough context, give them the context they can handle to help them do their job. But some decisions, some larger decisions are just like, oh, I'm not equipped to handle that or think about that in the role that I have today. And so some decisions need to live with the VP or the C-suite member. But I've had CSRs who, like, you give them information, they're on front lines with the customer, and they understand the context of their decisions, and they can make better decisions and more informed decisions on the fly if you give them that decision-making power. Like, look, on a call, I trust you to make this call or that call on the fly when you're talking to a customer. So think about getting decisions closer to the front lines. Quick story about this. So I was on a cruise few years ago now. It was during Hurricane Fiona. So Hurricane Fiona was like spinning up and it was definitely coming in our direction. And we learned that our particular cruise line made decisions differently than most cruise lines. Most cruise lines, corporate headquarters made the call of if to pull back their ships or to reroute their ships. And that's a big deal for cruise lines because cruise lines are like, you're going to like these destinations and these set ports, and that's why people sign up for that cruise and they want to go there. So to reroute a ship is a huge deal and it has lots of economic factors, et cetera, et cetera. Our cruise line gave that decision to the captain of the ship. And when I heard that, I was relieved because I was like, that makes sense to me because the captain is closer to the storm. They're trained on how to steer a ship and how to keep that safe. They know the puts and takes and the pros and cons and the nuances and all the different things. So that was a huge relief to me. And that's my general philosophy for running a business and distributing decision-making rights across a business as well. Okay, so with all that said, as a chief of staff, if you want to step back and say, okay, today, where do decisions live? And then today, where should decisions live? What's the most appropriate? What's the most relevant? What is the best way to move those decisions? Is it a conversation? Is it a round of iterations? Or is it just like, this is now here, done? It's just the way it is, which is a valid option, by the way. And at the end of the day, the bottom line here is, how do I create a system where the decisions flow to the right people at the right time? That sounds trite, it sounds simple, but if you get decisions to the right people at the right time, who can make the best call, you're giving yourself the highest probability of success, of the team success, of the company success. And when you do this well, your team builds trust, your team is faster, and your team is stronger. So this is a cool lens to look at as chief of staff. Where do decision-making rights live? All right, and with that, I will catch you next time on Leveraging Leadership.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.